All right, well, good morning, and I hope you're having a really good start to your Tuesday here. As I have put in the chat, I had created a poll in the Google Meet to have you respond to that one big overarching question with your homework assignment on the New Deal, overhaul or overthrow. And so you should be able to find that in the activities for Google Meet and click on that, click on poll, and you should be able to take it. Can someone confirm with me in one way or another if you see the poll? Oh. Hopefully, as we see the polls going live here, we're getting an idea here. So let's just please take that. Just simply decide if it's overthrow or overhaul. I think you should be able to find that in activities. And so you want to look for a little icon that looks like a triangle and might be labeled activities. And if you click on that, you should be able to see polls as an option. All right, well, it looks like at least 6 people have taken it. I know we have more than 6 people in class, so it would be fantastic if you could do that as we progress through our day here, through this class period. Huh. So I wonder if you, for those who aren't seeing it, it is possible having something to do with maybe the device that you're using. We're going to need to have like Google, I think, G Suite on your device. So that's maybe like where the iPad comes into play here. Or how you're going through it, if you're doing the app or through Google Chrome. You know, it's just a new little feature. I'm not going to be necessarily, we'll just play around with it. We'll experiment and see how things are going. So don't fret if you can't see it, if you can't find it. So those are just little glitches. We'll work ourselves through it. Okay. So if you can find it, great. If not, that's all right as well. I will do some inquiry to see how we can make that a little bit more functional in the future. Thought I'd take advantage of a new feature that was found in Google Meet, but we'll be able to adjust. All right. So today I really want us, we have been looking over the past couple days, some presidential approaches to the Great Depression, whether it was Herbert Hoover or Franklin D. Roosevelt. And so I want us to kind of look back on it and reflect a little bit on, how much realistically is Hoover considered a conservative leaning president, and how liberal leaning of a president is Franklin D. Roosevelt. So with the activity that we have planned for today, it's going to begin to kind of look at that. But in order to really get a start in that activity, I just want to kind of revisit this idea of a political spectrum with you, and then jump into the activity. All right, so let me pop out of this thing here for a moment. All right, so hopefully we can see our political spectrum idea here, and you can find a copy of these notes. And it's not like you really have to jot down any of these notes, but I do have a copy of it on the assignment for today, so you can take a look at that and follow along with it. Political spectrum. All right, so if you're a political junkie, you're gonna kind of like this. To segue a little bit from it, today is December 8th, and when we look at the presidential election that has just occurred, today is a day in which states are realistically should have certified the votes in their state, and then next week the electors will meet at their state capitals and vote for the President of the United States. So that's just a little sidebar, a little bit here. So this idea of a political spectrum, it's nothing really. I'm going to say nothing necessarily really new here when we talk about political spectrums. Is that it's a tool. It's a tool that we use to visually compare different political positions by placing the positions on one or more axes here, and whether it's on right or left here. And you may remember back when we looked at the slave perspective, looking at the different issues related to slavery, the pros and the cons side of it. I had brought in the political spectrum then, so this is kind of a little bit of review here as well. Always feel free to ask questions as we go through here. So in the United States, most commonly used political spectrum places a range of beliefs along a horizontal line and is described in terms of left or right of center. Now, sometimes in political science type classes, you might actually see almost a complete circle, whether it goes this way or goes that way, and there's just a little gap in between. And that just shows that realistically, the far reaches of the political spectrum, in some ways, they are almost the same, but there is some big differences. All right, and so here again, we have the center where I think most people tend to fall, and then you got your left, and then you got your right leaning. So when we talk about, the political spectrum, most commonly, there are two things that it will tell us. How much change in government a person is willing to allow, and we can kind of see that in that activity with the New Deal. But we can also think about just our general thinking about government, and then how much the government should intervene or get involved in the lives of the people. And we could probably use our contemporary situation to kind of influence perhaps that way of thinking, because we do see governments at various levels, whether it's at state or county or at city or even at the national level, in terms of getting involved with this pandemic, and as well as our academic, or excuse me, not academic, but economic situation as well. So we have some general assumptions here. When we think of people who are on the left side of the spectrum, they tend to be for more government intervention and gradual rapid change in government. So they're the ones that they really are going to look for perhaps change. And when we think of change, it's probably in a new way or something that hasn't been tried or tested perhaps. We're on the right side. It's a little bit more cautious, less government intervention, little to no change in the status quo. So when we want to throw some general ideas out there, and this last election cycle, these words were thrown out there by a number of individuals and media outlets. This idea of radical, liberal, moderate, conservative, reactionary. You can see that reactionary and conservative tend to be on the right, and liberal and radical tend to be on the left. So when we throw out words like radical, it is the far left of the political spectrum, and that it calls for wide sweeping, rapid change in basic structure of political, social, economic systems, maybe willing to resort to extreme methods. All right, violence and revolution could fit there. So can someone give me a name of a group, organization that could be considered radical? Put that in the chat or verbalize it. Give me a group that might be considered radical. Okay, perhaps the Black Lives Matter. I guess we would have to ask a little bit more of what the Black Lives Matter is looking for. Perhaps maybe if we reflect on the past year and looking at the reaction to a number of events in which rioting had occurred, and organizations like Black Lives Matter were involved in it, but they weren't necessarily the only ones involved in it. Maybe some of their views could be viewed as radical. Social Democrats I see out there. Yeah, Social Democrats could fit in there. And even, sometimes we look at scientific socialism, which is another word for communists, can fit in there as well. All right, but I think the thing to, once you be considered a radical, it's about to what measure are you willing to take? What kind of means are you willing to take here? And that usually is a violent way. Liberals a government should be actively involved in promoting social welfare of the nation's citizens. So I guess you can throw FDR if we look at that. Let's see, the Black Panther Party. Yeah, the Black Panther Party could be viewed as a radical party, especially if we look at maybe again, if we're looking at actions, and then the Black Panther Party for self-defense in the 1960s and early 70s could fit into that mode here. American Indian movement that started here in Minnesota could possibly fit in that. If we look at their actions, then if we look at what kind of platform or ideas that they have, we could find that the Black Panther Party does have some rather liberal and progressive ideas, and same with the American Indian movement, as well as the Black Lives Matters. So in some ways, the spectrum, I guess when we look at it, you can't necessarily just like pigeonhole one group be in this particular label. It perhaps can spread over So if we wrote Black Lives Matter, nice and big across, you can find that it would hit a couple categories, or same with Democrats. And then when we talk about, or when I mentioned about the right side, we could spell the word Republican a little bit bigger, and it could cover a number of areas as well here. You know, moderates, this is probably where you're going to find a good chunk of the American public anyhow, is in this category. May share viewpoints with both liberals and conservatives, tolerant of other people's views. And the degree of tolerance does change. Do not hold extreme views. Advocate to kind of go slow, wait and see here. You know, let's monitor it kind of approach. So when we talk about conservatives, you know, they tend to keep things with the status quo. You know, let's just maintain it. Usually hesitant or cautious about adopting new policies, especially if it involves government activism. They feel better that the less government there is, the better it is. Perhaps conservatives would think, you know, the local level government might be the best government to be active in your life, is perhaps, if we look at this idea of less government, less federal government, more local, that could be city, county, perhaps even state could fit in there as well. They might want to look for other groups or agencies to perhaps maybe create some change. You know, this is where the volunteer action might fit in here, and Herbert Hoover, possibly. So when we talk about the reactionary, far right of the ideological spectrum, want to go back to the way things were, the good old days, often willing to use extreme methods such as repression of government power to achieve their goals. Does anyone have like maybe a name of a group that could fit this category? Who possibly could fit this category? Maybe a name of a group that you had studied in 10th grade. Well, we've got white supremacy parties. Yeah, white supremacy parties could fit in this category, especially if they're going to advocate violent means. Ku Klux Klan, yeah, could fit in this reactionary. Could fit there, yes. Near the end of this trimester, we're going to study the Second World War. And so fascist groups like the Nazis would fit in this category. I suppose in the Western Hemisphere, when you hear of someone like a name of Juan Perón in the Peronist or Peronist party, in some ways they can fit into this. Benito Mussolini and his fascio could fit in here as well. So when we look at spectrums, to kind of zip through that one there, spectrums, if we look at our two major parties, we have the Democrats and we have the Republicans, and those images, the donkey and the elephant, we have to look at a political cartoonist, a satirist by the name of Tom Nast, who came up with the images of these two political parties, and his viewpoints on why he thinks, you know, the Democrats represent the donkey, and why the elephant represents the Republicans. You know, in some cases with the donkey, Tom Nast might be looking at the party is really the party of Jackson. All right, and so Jackson kind of rhymes with another animal that starts with the J. And then you have the elephant that sometimes is viewed as very nimble, but in actuality can have a lot of momentum going with it when it gets moving. And probably he's coming up with the elephant in reference to the Republican Party and some of the measures that it might have been doing during the Civil War and post-Civil War time. So Democrats, they generally tend to be liberal because they support government regulation of the economy, and Republicans seem to be the opposite, conservative, because they advocate the reduction in government. Excuse me. Within the parties, there are people who hold a variety of opinions of social and economic issues that fall on the spectrum of political ideologies. You can find examples of liberal Democrats, but also moderate Democrats. And you find moderate Republicans and conservative Republicans. So, and there are some where you can actually find conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans. And that could depend on the state that they're from. In the state of Minnesota, in the, I want to say 7th district, there is a Minnesota representative. His name is Colin Peterson. He's a blue dog Democrat. He did not get reelected, but you could put him in probably the conservative Democrat category. So current theorists say that U.S. political parties are becoming increasingly less moderate and therefore easily separated on the political spectrum. And, you know, and I guess we can get a sense of that today when we talk about the polarization of American politics that has been thrown out there this year. And so maybe that is saying that at this point in time, we are becoming less moderate and becoming more of us versus them, or them versus us kind of mentality. All right, so that's a little bit of that political spectrum. Now, if you go to our website and go to our current assignment, does anyone have any questions on what I just talked about with political spectrums? I kind of went a little fast through it. But does anyone have any questions related to it? And you can put that in the chat if you would like, or just add your thoughts to it right now about political spectrums and stuff. All right, well, you should be able to find the assignment. It's called DBQ, Hoover and Roosevelt, and DBQ just means document-based question. So this is a sources activity that you're going to look at. It's an activity that we have used in the past when we had taught advanced placement U.S. history. So this is one that can transcend time here. You'll notice, though, on this assignment, I have a quiz here, political typology quiz. I'm not asking you. It's not required by any means. And it'll look something like this. If you're willing to do that, that would be fantastic. So you kind of find out where you fit in the political typology, what kind of political leaning that you might be. And this is put out by the Pew Research Institution, and the Pew Institution is a fairly nonpartisan group. So it tries to walk that middle line here. And it just takes in with this quiz a variety of contemporary issues and see where you fit on it. So I think it'd be kind of interesting to do that. I had my daughter fill that out. She's a senior in high school, and I did it as well. And to our surprise, we don't see eye to eye on the same page on some of these issues. And I think she was kind of surprised. Myself, I'm not really surprised, just because one, we could probably look at our age and maybe demographics as well, or gender, but then life experiences can play a role here as well, and influencing factors and stuff like that. So, and some of us, we are beginning to become politically active, and others, still it just isn't their gig. All right. So with that, when you open it up, there are two things that you do need. You do need the DBQ, Hoover Roosevelt. And so it should look something like this. So you want to make sure you do that. Open that into Notability. And then, well, it looks like we've got some misspelling here on this one, but this is one that says also DBQ, Roosevelt and AMP Hoover. And it'll look something like this. And you can see that political spectrum on there as well. Okay, this one's going to take you a little while. Before I cut you loose on it, I'm going to go over what each of the sources are. So it's probably in your best interest to have it opened up. And so then you could probably jot by it what each of those documents are. Okay, but what you're going to do is you're going to read through each of the excerpts, highlight and take notes in the margins as you read it. So you're going to mark it up. It's a tough DBQ. If there are words you don't know, stop, look them up actually. Get on the internet, look up a word, find out what its meaning is, be able to put it in the context. All right, that's a skill that we all need to be able to do. If you can't put a word in a context, take time, look it up. You are looking for evidence that shows where on the political spectrum Hoover and Roosevelt would fall. For example, statements that support Roosevelt as a liberal and Hoover as a conservative. However, you may find statements that oppose those ideas and make note of that evidence too. So in the sources, there's a chance that Roosevelt, even though we might think he is a liberal, could indicate he's got some conservative views. So you jot that down. Hoover, we are assuming he is conservative, but there are times he might, in these sources, look as a liberal. And then as Roosevelt, we assume he's a liberal, so we jot down some of those things. When I say jot down some ideas, you could take out a quote, you could take out some specific words or phrases that are in there. You do want to make sure that you do keep note of what the source is. So if we look at source D, or excuse me, source A, and source A does show Roosevelt as a conservative, I would probably write down a few things about that I found in source A, and then I would reference it. I would probably type in source as stated in source A, or I might have like in parentheses source A, so I know this information I got is from source A. Because you want to be able to do that. So then these last two questions, where you have President Franklin D. Roosevelt is often thought as a liberal, to what extent is this characterization valid? So you want to make a claim by saying, yes, Roosevelt is a liberal, or Roosevelt is a liberal to a certain degree, or no, Roosevelt is not a liberal. And then use the evidence up here to explain it. And same thing for President Hoover. Does those instructions seem clear? Either put in the chat, or because it's hard for me to get visuals confirmation by looking at avatars. All right, I see some yeses going in there, super duper, all right? And yeah, I said super duper. Okay, so looking at these documents that you see here is you have a variety of them. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 documents, all right? And so like I said, I'm going to go through and I'm going to tell you which document goes with which president. All right, and so document A is, so document A goes with Hoover, and it shows you know, it gives his views on liberal and conservative ideas. All right. Document B, and I'm putting some of this information also in the chat, so you can jot it down just in case you are forgetting what I am saying. Document B is also showing Hoover as a conservative. Right, and it's more again about actions and methods. Document C is also going to be Hoover as a conservative. Document D is about Hoover as a conservative, but maybe critical of his methods because it's a political cartoon. So then that means the last ones, realistically, document E is going to be FDR, but he is going to portray Hoover as a liberal. Right? So got to find out which then also perhaps shows FDR's conservative traits. Now, FDR, does anyone remember where FDR is from or who FDR is related to? How about that? You put that in the chat or you can verbalize. Well, FDR, he is related to Theodore Roosevelt, and Theodore Roosevelt is a Republican. And so that means he's from that that Roosevelt line where there is possible that there is some Republican conservative traits. Theodore Roosevelt by no far is not what we call a typical Republican as well. There is some progressive ideas with him. Document F is looking at both presidents here, and it's a chart that shows government spending, and we'll see that government spending increases, so deficit is going to go up. And when you open up Uncle Sam's wallet and you start spending money, that's probably going to be more of a liberal idea. All right, and document G paints Roosevelt as a liberal. Again, looking at some of his philosophies, perhaps, and methods. And then document H, Roosevelt, as a liberal. And again, some of these documents are extracts of speeches that were given by both Hoover and Roosevelt, and so that perhaps can contribute to maybe the difficulty of trying to understand what these documents are getting at. All right, so in the chat, you should have found my thoughts on what each of the documents are all about. And so hopefully you took note of that. So that's kind of your guide. So when you are reading it, you can get perhaps an understanding, looking for what are the conservative pieces in that document or what are the liberal pieces to help you answer those questions. All right. I have been talking a lot here. And do we have any questions on what you need to do? All right, this is going to be due Thursday. All right, so we'll have some time today. We'll have some time tomorrow. And perhaps we'll have a little bit of time on Thursday. But you know, every day I will always take a little bit of your time. All right. And so, all right, I apologize if the poll did not work. Great an idea, but we'll keep looking for some ideas to get you involved here as well. All right, so with that, I wish you a great day. And I will keep this meet open. If you have any questions, stay on. If not, have a great Tuesday.